So I was on the internet the other day. Yeah, guess. Vega Bomber was actually on the internet. Yes, so my favorite site that I was on that day happened to be Twitter. And as I was on Twitter, I happened to talk to one of my friends on Twitter. We kind of go back and forth about content, about superheroes and all that good stuff. And that's what gave me the idea to talk about this topic. And of course, as you saw from the bumper, the topic is why I find Black Widow so hard to like. Now, before you get started with any kind of crazy ideas, let me be clear and let me set the table up front, okay? This has nothing to do with any kind of ism, all right? Sexism, genderism, whatever the ism you want to create or put in this has nothing to do with that. This is basically just my take on kind of what I thought about Black Widow after seeing her represented in several films up until now, and what she kind of came off like for me in the last film, Captain America Civil War. So it's really quite simple. So Black Widow I found very hard to like in Captain America Civil War. You see, when we first was introduced to the character of Black Widow, it was in the Iron Man 2 film, which was regrettably a pretty poor film. I mean, I just didn't care for it at all. The best parts of that film was just watching Iron Man and War Machine fight back to back. But okay, great. Cool. But that's about it. That's the best thing about that particular movie. But that's when the first time we see Black Widow. And the first time I saw Black Widow, no problem. Thought she was pretty cool. She jumped in there. She was able to fight. She showed her prowess in fighting. Okay, no big deal. Moving on. The next time we see Black Widow, it ends up being in the Avengers. And in the Avengers, she did her part. She did some fighting. Now, she did get swatted by the Hulk, and that gave her a little post-traumatic stress syndrome for a little bit. But she seemed to recover pretty well, and she beat up Hawkeye. So, I let that pass. No big deal. Then the next time we see Black Widow, we see her in, if I remember correctly, Captain America Winter Soldier, to which now she seems to be doing a lot more butt kicking, which, hey, it's what she does. No big deal. But then she takes on Bucky, and I think Bucky, which I think is kind of interesting because Bucky would just slaughter her. She doesn't stand a chance, but I get it. You're trying to show that she's tough. Cool. So she gets in there. I think she even gets a little bit wounded. All right. Then the next time we see Black Widow, it would be in the Age of Ultron, to which in this film, I actually probably liked her the most because I actually got to understand a little bit more about her backstory as they tell the story that here she was this younger girl who was sterilized and taught to be this killing machine that she was. Essentially, she's just Jason Bourne with breasts, essentially. And so I got the chance to think about her in a different light. It's just not this anomaly woman who just shows up on this team of all guys and kicks butt. She actually has a past, and now we get to know about some of that, and we get to see a little bit of her vulnerability, which is very important in films. Now, I know some of the internet feminists jumped all over Joss Whedon for this because they thought, why are you making her such a girl? Which is kind of crazy because she wasn't. She's a woman, and she's explaining that there's one thing she can't do, and that's because she's sterilized. She can't give life, but yet she can take life out. It was supposed to be a pretty nice commentary. And I like the fact that her, even though I didn't understand how her and Hulk would hook up, especially after he swatted her in Avengers, but the idea that she was at least the only person who could calm him down and talk to him, man, that seemed like strength to me. I thought that was pretty good. So I liked Black Widow in the Age of Ultron. So you might be thinking, okay, Bomber, then tell us, what is it about her that you just couldn't stand in Civil War? Well, I'm glad you asked. You see, in Civil War, a couple of things popped up and a couple of things that I happened to notice. Like, for example, in that first fight scene with Crossbones, when they were going in to go take out Crossbones, I noticed that in that fight scene, she does all the punching and kicking and nobody lands a punch on her. Not one person. Now, I find that a little interesting because if you want to be considered a tough fighter with the tough guys, with the boys, you got to be able to take a shot. If you notice, everybody in the film took a shot. I mean, even T'Challa had blood on him from the explosion. Iron Man had a black eye. Spider-Man had a black eye. Cap was beat up. Bucky got his arm blasted off. Spoiler alert. Hopefully you've seen it by now. I mean, everybody took something, but if you notice, Black Widow is the only person in this movie. She doesn't even get a scratch. She doesn't get anything happen to her, despite two things happen to her. Now, I know some of you might go, wait a minute. She did get punched. No. I've seen the movie 4 times. She did not. Crossbones grabbed her by her hair and threw her into a tank, to which then she kicked everybody's butt inside the tank, and then a bomb blew off. By the way, why would a bunch of military trained guys with guns just stand there and wait for her to run up on them? Why wouldn't one of them just shoot her? You see, the difference is here is that she's trained, but so are these guys. So at some point, it's just really unrealistic to think that they'll just sit there and do nothing. These guys are essentially like black ops. I mean, why would you hire the worst military guys to help you go in on a deal like this? So to me, I thought, okay, you're kind of really trying to push this agenda pretty hard on me. And I don't like it because I understand that it's not realistic. Every superhero should get punched or hit or something, because when they can return from being hit or kicked, you go, okay, now that's toughness, that's no moxie. But just sitting there letting you stand there and you just get a shot on everybody, nobody ever hits you back, especially when you don't have superpowers. Now wait, some of you comic book dudes are gonna say, yeah, but in the comics, she's got the super soldier serum, although it's not as good as Captain America. To which I say, fine, but in the cinematic universe, it was never established that she has any superpowers. She's just a well-trained spy, that's all we get. So at some point, she's gonna have to show that she can take a hit or something if you want me to believe that she's just as tough as the guys. Because I realize right now that's the thing that kind of bothers me, is kind of we have to show women being as strong as men and in the physical realm, and then therefore that makes them great. But if a guy is that way, then somehow he's wrong. So I really don't understand this narrative that seems to be popping up lately. But that's what happened to me there. But that's just one thing. The second thing I find untenable about this in the movie is how she turns on Black Panther. Okay, first of all, you were there when Black Panther's father was killed. You tried to console him, kinda, I guess. And then, and of course, by the way, if you look at the film, she's in an area where she was been in a bomb. It's twice she's been in a bombing. 2 times you look at her. Look at her, no damage in that scene, no scars, no, but yet Black Panther's bleeding and everything else, right? And again, I like strong female characters, right? Do I need to list them? Because Furiosa was one of them, and I can always go back to Ridley. I can also go to Sarah Connor. So it's not that. It's just that, come on now, this doesn't quite work, because anybody who's trained in martial arts or anybody that's been in the military knows that didn't happen. You don't walk into fights where you always get the upper hand and nobody else ever lands a punch. That's just ridiculous. If guys are gonna get their butts kicked, then you guys show the same thing happening here. But anyway, I digress. So with BP, she's there, his dad gets blown up, she tries to console him, and then if you remember correctly, Bucky was getting ready to kill her because he'd been triggered, he was in kill mode. And who was the one who saved her life? Black Panther. Bucky was about to choke her out and kill her, okay? And it was Black Panther who stepped up and stopped that mess. But then what do they do? In that big airport fight, what does she do? She shoots Black Panther, the one person who saved her. Yet the one person she felt the need to console when his dad got blown up. Now you just inextricably turn on him? That seems kind of strange. And then the line that she was given, she says in the movie, she says, hey, I said I'd help you find him. I didn't say I'd help you catch him. There's a difference. Oh, so we're gonna play semantics now. When you know why this dude is after Bucky so bad. You were there when his dad was blown up. So I'm looking at this and I'm kind of going, that doesn't make you very likable, Black Widow. Not at all. Now, I know what some of you might say, because some of you might say, but you know, she is a spy. She's a double agent. She's able to hold in her emotions and not show any kind of, feelings for anything. So, true. But Age of Ultron kind of breaks your theory on that, because she was showing feelings for the Hulk, as a matter of fact. She was. So we know that even amongst that killing machine, the monster that she calls herself, she still has vulnerability, and that's what we like. We need characters who are vulnerable. If you could just walk through anything, nobody likes those characters that much. That's why people didn't like Superman. It's why they didn't like James Bond in a lot of ways. That's why you don't like Bruce Willis's character in Die Hard, the last couple of movies, because he just can step through anything. It's just not believable. It's not realistic. It's hard to get invested unless you just want to see a female just kicking a bunch of people's butts, which shouldn't be rare if she's trained. And well, anyway, there's MMA fighters that are females. This isn't new, but anyway, it seems to be the case. So that's that issue. Then I'd say another issue would be the flip-flop she does. I mean, think about it. In the beginning, she says that, well, it's better to have one hand on the steering wheel than no hands on the steering wheel. So she sided with Tony. But then in the middle of the heat of the moment in the battle, right, after Tony had said earlier, hey, my plan was to go easier on him, you want to change it? And she said no, let's give it to him. But then what does she do? She plays Benedict Arnold to Tony at that moment. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then even worse, later on, she calls out Tony for being arrogant and not being able to see what was going on. It's like, but wait a minute. He called you out for being a double agent, because he even said, I guess some habits die hard. Then she flips on him and gets on his narcissism. But hello, Tony's narcissism isn't the problem here. He actually really believes that they need to be in check based off of what happened to what the mother said to him and other things that you see in the film. So if I'm Tony Stark, how could I ever trust her if she did that? If I'm Black Panther, how could I ever trust somebody who's willing to flip-flop? And then I'll ask you the big question, and here it is. What exactly did Black Widow gain by switching from Team Stark to Team Captain America? Because being on Team Tony got you signed on that deal so that way that the law enforcement and the people aren't looking for you. So why would you switch to the team that would be the fugitives? What did you gain by going over to that team, by switching over? You gained nothing to do that. So to do all that and play that role didn't seem to make sense. Plus her scene inside the church didn't make sense, because she's telling Cap that she came along to try to change his mind, but she later on says, I know I couldn't change your mind. So then Cap rightfully says, well, why are you here? And then she says, well, I didn't want you to be alone. What does that have to do with anything? And by the way, he wasn't alone, because Agent 13 was there, who he was crushing on, by the way, and so was Falcon. So he wasn't alone. This is what I see. I see, here's a person who evidently in this latest movie, she gets into fights, but no one ever lands a punch on her. In the movie, the only person that did land a punch on her, it wasn't a punch actually, it was Hawkeye threw her down to the ground, but then she reversed him and put him in one of those arm bars. I think Scarlet Witch grabbed her and threw her into like a van, but then she gets up later on and she's able to point her stingers at Black Panther and stop it. But if you notice in the picture, she's fine. There's nothing wrong with her. She doesn't even look like she's been in a fight. So here's my thing. If these movies are action movies and they're about fighting, and if they're about fighting and you're fighting with the big boys, and she is, and she's not as powerful as they are, then she's the main person who should at some point get some kind of injury or something so that she's humanized. Even Hawkeye got hurt in the last film, Age of Ultron. So I'm really trying to understand, why does she seem to be immune to everything else? Because it's not realistic that you'd get into a fight and never get punched. So to recap, just to let you know, when I first was introduced to Black Widow, I thought the character was fine. I thought she was good. I thought, like Hawkeye, she was kind of useless in a way in a world of superpowers, but I could appreciate what they were doing, and I was fine with it. But in this last film, Civil War, I'm sorry, Black Widow, but to me, you just weren't likable at all. In Age of Ultron, you started to show some layers, which was making you kind of interesting. But now, we're just supposed to believe that you're, just because you're a woman, that you can step into all these fights and not really ever take any damage. And to me, if you want to sit at the big boy table with all the other guys, you've got to take some hits too. You just can't walk in there and just do that and then just be fine. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. It actually demotivates the case for really appreciating you, because it's just too fake. So anyway, this is just my issues. This is just kind of what I think. I know this probably isn't very popular. I'm pretty sure a lot of people drinking the Kool-Aid. Then there may be some people on this side who just hate her just because she's a woman, and I'm not coming from there. So don't even think that. I like good action films and I like good fight scenes. And you got to keep that stuff realistic if that's what you're trying to do. Otherwise, some of that stuff that you're doing is just corny, and it wouldn't work in real life. And it's just funny to see people thinking, I want to do that in real life. No, I'm sorry. In reality, those guys would stomp you because they're also trained and they're carrying guns and they've got armor on. And you walk up there just in a light jacket and you're supposed to take people out. Sorry, just couldn't buy it. So anyway, next video that's coming up, I'm going to talk more about Zemo, and really Zemo versus Loki. And then we'll see where else we can go with that thread. But wanted to give you guys something. Anyway, this is your boy, the Vega Bomber, and I am out.